you have a lot of passion of what you're doing, so you really spend a lot of energy to try to make people enthusiastic. So I think it can have a very big impact, but I think as well, like when we are doing it, we also have to think about who are we helping, what do we want, like to have the longer perspective as well.
I do think that art can have an impact, and it can create some kind of new experience of the existing conditions, so it can both expose the existing but also generate something new through its presence.
The most interesting thing for me is not art, it is life. So I just look at the art as some kind of a tool. I don't know if it is art or if I am an artist, but these strategies, some kind of a tool to expand or intensify a space or a situation or a relation or a feeling.
In a larger scale, it can be useful for urban planners maybe to basically just deal with questions, that to create spaces where people can just be and not without any direct function, maybe.
I'm not interested in just adding to a place, either if it's temporary or permanent, but kind of completing it somehow, or at least coming closer to that.
It's very different to make public art in your own country where you've been a lot and then coming here. So now I'm just very curious, and this area is completely fantastic.
Chapel is a site which was really like flourishing industrially in the 50s, and now it's a completely different image of the district.
Chapel is so close to Budapest city center, but so few people from Budapest actually go to Chapel, and this mental distance between the city and Chapel, which is something I think is what this project also is addressing.
I think for our generation it's quite nostalgic because it still have a good proportion of the socialist era, which is kind of fading out from the other places in Budapest.
I really like this place because it's so complex and there are so much things to explore and understand, and there are some things I don't really understand, and that's what motivates an artist.
In relation to Scandinavia, the contrasts are very big, and it's quite overwhelming for us, I think, to come here. I mean, we've just been here for 4 days now. This is the 5th day, but still we're kind of getting used to the surroundings, and we're all really trying to be a part of this place, and also by meeting the other artists and hearing from them.
I feel really like inspired to today and go out and look if there is anything.
At the moment, we are quite in the first phase of searching for ideas, but I think I will do some kind of sound walk with portable speakers that I will install around the industrial area, and I'm looking for some kind of communication with the acoustics of the architecture of the place.
I came here with a general idea about a circle of life, how a need appears in a society or something. It's a need, and we build something for the need, and then the need goes away, and what we built will then decay. So it's this circle that I'm interested in, especially with the post-industrial environment, is a symbol of that.
I'm working on a urban game, and this picture, Budapest-Østfold, is a possibility to try out all these ideas what I have.
We try to combine performing art with the technology or media art. And like Matti and me, we will represent more like the performing art, and Christoph is doing everything which is visual or sometimes sound art.
I've been working with art in church rooms, and I'm working with rituals as artistic form or art form. So this is a very specific room to work in.
The art I do is very diverse. It's in the in-between between theatre and fine arts. Often like aesthetically very like sound and visuals and persons. What I've been doing, what I was interested in, just to find out, to map somehow who are we, what do we think about site specificity, and having all these seminars both in Budapest and Fredrikstad and getting all this information, and then suddenly you were like, but what do I do in this context? Like in Moss, it's a lot about the community, like how do we talk in the community, what do we want in the community, how do we create a community? So now it's like, what is Moss dreaming about? What does Moss want to be like? Does it want to be like the sleeping town for Oslo, or does it want to be something else? So that is why I want to make the Dream Factory, because we have to wake up from the sleep to dream somehow in Moss.
Please take one transparent sheet, all of you, and please find a spot where you draw the outlines of the landscape. Basically, I work with kids in Hungary, and I lead workshops regularly. Mostly we are working with sounds, and I also lead a drama group. So here I wanted to try out how we can make a game with kids.
Who created you? We come in peace.
The narration we recorded during our discovery of this scary place. They were really excited about this space. They have never been to such a place.
Please take part of the construction. Take a few tiles and add some more buildings, roads, and bridges.
In 10 years, at least 15,000 people will come here, and they will live here. And I was really curious how they can imagine this process, and what can be their reflection, and how they can see all this problematic in their own way.
I'm making quite loads of site-specific work, but it's very rare that I could properly invest in the acoustic qualities of the architecture or the space. So basically, during this long week, my main focus was to really try to get deep into it, so people start to hear these nuances that I'm looking for. There's a very rich diversity of echoes here. Now my stick is broke apart.
As you might have noticed, I am not talking. What you hear now is just my inner voice. Okay, it's not my real inner voice. He has a strong Hungarian accent, when he talks in English in me. I have chosen the British accent rather than the American because I lived in London. Don't talk during the performance. Really, don't talk.
I was kind of feeling that this spot here was had some kind of special reverb to it, which you can hear, and that was my impression from the first time. Actually, it was just this kind of the space and the reverb. Since this is just an experiment, it's not mechanical, you know, so it doesn't go by itself. So I need to push it, but with this one, what's interesting is to send the sounds around, basically. And when you're standing kind of here, and you will get the sounds coming towards you. It will go away into the space. So if you go a little bit further back, I can push it, just so you can see.
For me, sound is a material and also like a social material, a communicative material, and very powerful material to work with. It can tell stories, it can trigger emotions, and through all this, like trigger the mind and make you think or speculate or feel nostalgic, get connected with the memories.
I mean, spaces to me really consist of people, and spaces are processes, and it's not about exactly where the path is and so on, it's about how spaces are used. I've been focusing on the river of Moss for my investigations of the project. The river is really the meeting between the past, present and the future developments in Moss, and kind of the whole phenomena of Moss really unfolds around the river. What we see here now and the current state of this space is going to radically change in a very short time. So that's kind of the representation of the future. This dotted path that you see here is where the actually planned path will be in the future. I just visualize a plan, and by doing so we can together experience the path of the future, and by doing so we get a physical experience of it, and we get the chance to discuss it. Activities generate space. So when we are here, we're already beginning the park.
We're in the space that we chose for our investigation in the deep belly of the factory, Pettersson. So we started this work together with wanting to try and figure out if we could find a sacred place, or if it's interesting to find a sacred place in these post-industrial areas.
For me, it was also important to create a room for doubting in this experiment, and also in this field of art in public space, because to understand what is the role of an artist and what is the possibilities and who do we serve. So in a way, this project is also for me about to kind of examine my own prejudgments about society.
I find it useful for this cold, in this cold factory building. Okay, so now we are maybe a little bit more warm, and I give the voice to Flora.
For us, it was a physical experience to put ourselves really out of our comfort zone, to work here in the dust and cold and with the environment, which was really like from one side really hard, but from the other side really interesting.
Went around into the space and recorded different sounds from the place and constructed rhythms out of those sounds.
When we started to think about how we're going to connect ourselves and the spectators to Csepel Művek, it was a big deal to decide what will be a real connection, not only an artistic input that we just place in this location, but how do we really connect. And the workers mentioned, and the fact that lots of workers live here with their families, and also workers who work in different places come here to stay and come here to sleep. And this kind of industrial city is alive 24 hours a day, gave quite a lot of inspiration.
Hey! Hú! Ha! Hey! Hú! Ha!
In the last 10 days, we spent some time with kids, and based on their ideas, we made a film. It's a horror movie.
Nézzük már meg! Ezt kitalálunk egy szöveget, hogy mondjuk valami, mondjuk Istenről, vagy valamit, és akkor megmondjuk, és akkor így átjönnek a szellemek, és már vége is.
És ezt így ide húzzák, erre le kell feküdni, ez így összepréseli a fejét, ez meg így belefúródik a hasába, már látszik itt a fér, meg minden, már a vértől belosdásodott. Így vannak a kapcsológomb, úristen!
Most jutott eszembe, nálam van telefon.
De valahogy, akkor van telefon, akkor üzenni valahogy videóval a külvilágra.
The name of my project or performance is Horizon, because this word came to my mind quite often in the first few days when I was cycling around or walking around, like what is the horizon in these narrow streets, or what is the horizon for the people who live here? The Stalker was quite a big inspiration. Right now I'm installing my speakers into this beautiful Chinese waste bag, or I don't know what's the name of this. These will be used by the audience members during experimental bike ride around the industrial area. So basically there's just it's quite a simple composition with two parts, and both parts are from the sounds that I recorded here. The sound from the power plant, which is just next to the Danube. But it has such a beautiful tone that I pitched it and then it turned into this large, very noisy organ chord.
The title of my project is Potential Park. Through exposing something existing, kind of emphasizing the fact that there are potential futures which one might not see, and kind of encourage people to just see something which is everyday, something that you usually maybe overlook. I'm with light exposing and emphasizing an existing little grass plot here in the middle of the industrial area of Chapel. This area is very dark at night, and I'm placing 10 floodlights all around the circumference of the grass area. So I'm basically going to really flood it with a lot of light, but the light will be slowly transforming. And there's two kind of main experiences for the audience. The one is being inside the field, and since the light is surrounding you completely and also blinding you quite much, you will only, more or less at least, experience this grass field. So you become kind of isolated in something which seems like, in a sense, a natural field.
Alconi is blue hour. The blue hour became somehow the core of where we could meet, where we could actually talk and contemplate on where we are, what would we like to do. We were talking a lot about these sacred places, this place for not doing anything, and I'm really happy and very fond of the fires, making the fires. It has this magnetic effect on people. I mean, if you light a fire, you're bound to have people come. It is really wonderful to share a time which we don't need to do anything.
When we came here, there was a lot of the protests in the streets in Budapest, inside the city, and then it seemed so important to everybody what was going on, and then it was so strange to come out here because there was no really sign of it. It's like exploring if you can relocate this protest to here by making like some kind of fake protest with sound. We were having the installation and it playing quite loud, and then at some point Fanny came to me and said that we should turn it off, and I had seen these quite large guys that were standing there, and I thought like they were interested in the art, but it wasn't like that. First they came because they thought a lot of people were standing outside because it was like and then there was nobody, and then there were, from the demonstration of course people were shouting things that was not for the government. Yeah, not to be able to play everything in the public space is quite, I think, serious, and that people can be so angry about it. Like, yeah, I got a bit surprised, I must say.
call this thing látlelet in Hungarian, which both refers to like medical evidence, but also evidence just in a more general sense, but more focusing on the experience side. So how I perceive this place, the people here, what I found about them, their lives, how they behave, how they relate to each other, and so on. We are actually in an old hospital building and an old examination room. My whole thing kind of wanted to map things out that could point to a sort of future perspective for this place, and not only for this place, but like people living around here, like what are their dreams, hopes, and fears.
First we will do a performance, approximately 10 minutes, and it will be like a site-specific performance where we use also movements, also music or sound connected to this structure, and drum set, and visual video mapping, which is also connected to our moves and which is also sound reactive.
It's a kind of techno book.
The sound recordings that we use later collected from factories in Norway.
We will do a physical experience, an interactive physical experience with the public, one by one, with these two helmets we got as a present from a Reciprocal factory in Moss.
This physical experience really came from that feeling when we were in that Reciprocal factory. We experienced these helmets, this rhythmical atmosphere of the factory. You are not really recognize how much noise pollution you experience day by day during your life.
had several ideas in similar concepts. I started to feel more the presence of people here and the kind of a little bit of the vibe of the place. My piece is more about the present and the past and the future, and it's like a kind of a time. I would say a wind chime blowing in the wind, representing time. The actual circle movement that I'm using is part of the folk dance tradition, but it's not the main. I have understood that it's not the main Hungarian folk dance style in a way. Yes, that's how you do. You go back and forth.
Like this.
Okay. Holding the hands.
Készfogás.
So say, yeah, and then if you have the camera like we have now. So what I would suggest is that so you go in. The input to this idea comes from the place and from the people and from this place. Should we take the first one first and then we move on? Yeah. The whole system makes its own music in a way. I have 5 different loops, the circling dance move, and then each loop has one note, one bing, one sound. So every time they go around, bing, and they start again, bing. I think that art in general is more about just making an awareness or asking a question or putting an angle to something that will maybe make you think or maybe make you think differently.
I think the task, my task, which I am engaged in, is to produce, make questions, and to manage to have a dialogue.
I think that public art is really important in the sense that it's accessible, and in that way it's always to some degree inclusive.